At dawn, the whistle screamed across Highland Park. Thousands of men poured into Ford's factory, lunch pails clanging like tin prayers. Each worker had one job, one motion, repeated hundreds of times until the sound of metal became their heartbeat. Then, one morning in 1914, Henry Ford made an announcement that stunned the world. He would pay every worker $5 a day, double the standard wage. Newspapers called it a miracle. Unemployment lines vanished overnight as men marched toward Detroit believing they'd found salvation on the assembly line. But what Ford gave with one hand, he took back with the other. To earn that wage, workers had to surrender more than sweat. His sociological department inspected their homes, judged their marriages, and dictated their morals. Drink too much, gamble, live immorally. You lost your place in the line. For $5 a day, a man could buy a car, but he could no longer own his life. The machine didn't just change how America worked, it changed what it meant to be human. Before Ford, a car was a luxury, hand-built, slow, and priced for the elite. The average American could never dream of owning one. Henry Ford wanted to change that. His vision was simple, a car for the great multitude. At the Highland Park plant in 1913, he and his engineers created something the world had never seen: the moving assembly line. Instead of workers walking to parts, parts came to them. Conveyor belts carried unfinished Model Ts down the line as men performed the same task again and again. Tighten this bolt, attach that wheel, hammer this panel. The result was staggering. A single car that once took 12 hours to assemble could now be built in 93 minutes. Production exploded. Costs plunged. The Model T's price fell from $850 to less than $300 within a decade. Suddenly, America could move, literally. Farmers, factory workers, families, all could own the same machine that once symbolized privilege. But speed had a cost. The faster the belt moved, the less human the worker became. They were no longer craftsmen. They were extensions of the machine, perfectly replaceable, endlessly repeatable. And as Ford's empire grew, the rhythm of his factories began to dictate the rhythm of the world itself. January 5th, 1914, a date that changed capitalism forever. Henry Ford stepped onto a platform inside his Highland Park plant and made an announcement that rippled across continents. Starting today, every man who works here earns $5 a day. The crowd gasped. It was double the average factory wage, an unthinkable fortune for men who toiled 10 hours tightening the same bolt. Overnight, thousands lined up outside the factory gates, some walking miles through snow just to apply. Newspapers called Ford a hero. Economists called him insane. But Ford wasn't generous. He was calculating. High turnover had crippled production. Men quit faster than the assembly line could train them. By raising wages, Ford bought loyalty and stability. Productivity soared, and the workers he paid could now afford the cars they built, turning employees into consumers, fueling a cycle of endless demand. Ford had discovered something profound. If you pay people just enough to buy what they make, the system sustains itself. It wasn't charity. It was genius and control. The modern world was born that day, humming, efficient, and forever restless. Behind the gleam of efficiency, Ford built something darker, a system of moral surveillance disguised as progress. To keep his $5 a day dream alive, he created the sociological department, a team of inspectors who visited workers' homes unannounced. They checked for cleanliness, sobriety, and American values. A man could lose his job if his wife didn't cook properly, if he drank on weekends, or if he rented a room to immigrants. The message was clear. To earn Ford's wage, you had to live Ford's way. The factory extended beyond its walls, into kitchens, bedrooms, and mines. At work, every movement was timed. At home, every behavior was judged. Workers who failed moral audits were expelled from the profit-sharing program and publicly shamed. Ford's dream of efficiency became an experiment in social engineering, one that turned free men into instruments of a machine that demanded not only their labor, but their obedience. It was the perfect system. High wages bought compliance. Moral oversight disguised control. The world admired his innovation. Few noticed the cost of being perfect in Henry Ford's America. By the 1920s, Ford's experiment had reshaped the planet. Factories from Detroit to Moscow copied his blueprint. The Ford system became the gospel of modern industry. Every car, every radio, every toaster born after that decade carried his fingerprint. Productivity exploded. The cost of goods fell, and a new middle class emerged, consumers powered by debt, advertising, and dreams of ownership. Ford's assembly line didn't just build cars, it built mass society. People no longer worked to survive, they worked to buy. But for the men on the line, life shrank to rhythm and repetition. 10 hours a day, one gesture repeated thousands of times. Shoulders failed, minds dulled, tempers cracked. Ford paid them well, but the job consumed everything else: curiosity, pride, even thought. The machine that once promised freedom had created a new cage, faster, shinier, invisible. And as the rest of the world embraced Fordism, humanity quietly learned how to trade soul for salary, efficiency for identity. The future was affordable, but it wasn't free. By the 1930s, the cracks in Ford's empire began to show. The Great Depression hit, and even his mighty factories slowed. Workers, once grateful for their $5 wage, now demanded dignity. They wanted a voice, and Henry Ford refused to listen. Union organizers from the United Auto Workers, UAW, marched to his gates, met not with negotiation but with fists. Ford's private enforcers, the service department, beat organizers in broad daylight. Reporters captured the violence on film. Men bloodied, banners trampled, guards smiling through cigar smoke. Ford had mastered the machine, but he could not control people forever. By 1941, under federal pressure and public outrage, he finally recognized the union he had tried to crush. The man who once promised to liberate the worker had become the symbol of their struggle. The machine he built was unstoppable, but it no longer belonged to him. Progress had found its conscience, and it was angry. By the time Henry Ford died in 1947, the world he forged had outgrown him. The assembly line had conquered every industry, from cars to clothes, from weapons to words. Factories now stretched across continents, humming to the same relentless rhythm he invented. His dream had come true: cheap goods, fast production, global efficiency. But so had his nightmare. The line never stopped, it only got faster. The faces changed, but the motion stayed the same. Click, shift, repeat. In every Amazon warehouse, in every gig worker's algorithm, the spirit of Highland Park still whispers, keep moving. Ford gave humanity speed but took away its pause. He democratized consumption but mechanized existence. A century later, we still chase his promise that if we work faster, produce more, and obey the rhythm, we'll finally be free. But freedom, it turns out, cannot be mass-produced. The machine still moves, and now it moves us. Nếu bạn muốn, mình có thể rút gọn thành phiên bản 1-2 phút để đọc lên video mà vẫn giữ chất lịch sử plus điện ảnh suy tư.